And we are live. It is Thursday, Orange and Blue today. A celebration of what has happened in free agency, Mace, but also a look ahead to what next for the Denver Broncos.
As we get into, is it wave 3 or are we past wave 3 now?
It seems like wave 3. Let's just call it wave 3 through the weekend, right?
Yeah, wave 3 tends to last longer. Wave 1 is quick. Wave 1 is like day 1. Wave 2 is like day 2 And when we're talking about day 2, we're talking about day 2 of the legal tampering period. And then day 3 is day 1 of the new league year. And you see that face there on the slide. That, of course, is Cooper Kupp of the Los Angeles Rams, formerly of the Los Angeles Rams, because they couldn't find a trade partner for him, and so they had to cut him. And, of course, Adam Schefter earlier today saying the Broncos are among the teams that could have some interest in Cooper Kupp. But would he make sense for the Denver Broncos? That's a lot more than $64,000 question, I would say.
Yeah, it's a pretty big question. And just like Kupp, we'll go, hello, it's Mason Cease here on Orange and Blue today. And let's go ahead and start there with Cooper Kupp because Mace, they've done enough in free agency. If they did nothing other than sign a punter, I'd be fine. This is enough, and they don't really need Cooper Kupp.
Well, what's interesting with Cooper Kupp, I mean, where are you going to align him? Let's start there. Where are you going to use him?
He would be in the slot.
Primarily. Not always, but primarily. A lot of slot snaps are going to go to Evan Engram.
Probably if it's based like Jimmy Graham was. Jimmy Graham's average was around 67%. Articles varied back then when Jimmy Graham wanted to be paid and franchise tagged as a receiver.
Yes.
Because he played the slot that much. It's more than the 52% that Sean Payton's Broncos tight ends have played. The Broncos tight ends, per Next Gen Stats, have played in the slot for roughly 52.3% of snaps. Yeah, it's going to be more than that.
And think about that. The Broncos tight ends, they're not exactly superior pass catchers.
No.
But still, 52.3% of their routes from the slot, according to Next Gen Stats, and that's fifth most in the NFL. And if you bring in Evan Engram, and we talked yesterday about how many of Evan Engram's snaps with the Giants in 21 and then the Jaguars the last 3 years are in space, and that incorporates wide slot backfield. Evan Engram, with his pass catching proficiency, you're going to use him in the slot more. So how many snaps would Cooper Kupp have in the alignment that suits him best if you had him here?
Yeah.
Realistically.
And would it be for that price tag?
A price tag that we're getting some indications out of New England is apparently excessive. Mike Giardi of Boston Sports Journal, citing a league source, says Cooper Kupp's asking price is, quote, insane, unquote, compared to where he is at this point in his career. Another report from Mass Live saying that the Patriots are currently interested in bringing Cooper Kupp aboard, but they consider the asking price, quote, a bit too steep, unquote. And the Patriots, they have more cap space than anybody else. They have money burning holes in their pockets right now. And if they consider the asking price to be too steep, they, with more space than anybody else, then if you're the Broncos, certainly that price has got to come down. DeAndre Hopkins' contract, that was about what, $6 million for 1 year, right?
Yeah.
Considering Cooper Kupp's injuries in the last 3 years, and also considering some other factors, considering some advanced metrics, I'm going to throw this up here. This is from Warren Sharp of Sharp Football about Cooper Kupp. And this is, you look at these numbers per player tracking data from ESPN. This is where the injuries of recent years have an impact on Cooper Kupp and his ability to get open among receivers, going from 15th in 2021, the year the Rams won the Super Bowl, the year he had his otherworldly season where you arguably the MVP that year. Dropped to 71st in 2022, 102nd in 2023, 141st in 2024. Is that a trend that you're going to pay an awful lot for? And that's the thing. If you pay for Cooper Kupp, you have to pay for who Cooper Kupp is now, not who he was. Who he is now, I don't mean to be too negative, but it's a relative shadow of what he once was. So
I don't think that's negative, Mace. That's just the truth. And the
Yeah.
truth isn't meant to make you feel good.
yeah. So price tag, I probably wouldn't go $1 higher than $7 million for 1 year.
I don't even like that price tag.
Yeah.
And here's why, Mace. Holy Diver says it in our chat room. I don't want him getting in the way of Marvin Mims.
And that's another thing. I mean,
Troy Franklin.
we have the conversation about Von Miller, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Von Miller comes in, he takes away snaps from Dondrea Tillman and Jonah Ellis.
Yes.
If Cooper Kupp comes in, he takes away snaps from Troy Franklin and Marvin Mims Jr. Probably not so much Devon Vele, different type of receiver, but he takes away snaps from them, and you want to develop them. And okay, veteran presence. Well, you have Cortland Sutton. There's your veteran presence. He's a team captain. You've got leadership in the room already. More leadership, but how much becomes superfluous leadership? And is that really worth adding more to your roster when you can basically take that money and maybe spend it in other directions, whether it's adding another piece to the roster, maybe a piece that you add in August if you've got injuries. I mean, because of salary cap, it is a finite asset. You don't want this thing to look like the New Orleans Saints. You don't want to get into, having to make all these moves year after year. You want to be sensible with it.
Mm-hmm.
And every dollar you can carry over to a future year. Every dollar can be that you save can go to somebody else. Remember, you got to pay Nick Benito potentially. I mean, you want him back, do you not?
Oh,
you want to extend Zach Allen, do you not?
Yep.
Do you want to extend John Franklin Myers? Do you want to keep the defensive line, the front seven together? Well, you're going to have to get the cap space from somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And you can't be throwing money around willy-nilly on a veteran receiver who's no longer the player he used to be. To quote Nick Saban when he was coach of the Miami Dolphins, this ain't fantasy football.
Yeah.
Cooper Kupp's a great name, but we have more heartstrings more attached to Vaughn, and both you and I have said no to Vaughn. No. You don't need Vaughn.
Look ahead, not back.
You're not going that way.
Yeah.
You're going this way.
With Evan Engram, I think you're realistic about who he is, and you're bringing him in for the player he is right now. If anything, the skill set he has right now actually fits what the Broncos want from him more than the skill set of his rookie season. He's a different type of receiver now than he was when the Giants got him in 2017. And when you're talking about those short crosses, those, being a part of those short area mesh concepts, he executes those better than he did as a rookie. That's better. That's a better fit. So the years you've added to him have probably made him better. Now it's just knock on whatever surface you can that he's healthier than he was last year. But the thing is, it was an injury last year, and the season before he played a full season. With Cooper Kupp, we're talking about a 3-year pattern here. That's another thing. If Cooper Kupp only had 1 year in which he was dealing with injuries, the conversation, the parameters of it are entirely different. And oh, by the way, if he only had 1 year in which he was injured in the last 3, are the Rams letting him go and moving on to Devontae Adams? No. There's a reason why the Rams decided to move on from him and go to another 30-something receiver. That's the thing. It's not like the Rams got younger at wide receiver. They went for another 30-something. Mm-hmm. So it's this 30-something receiver with this injury history that they knew. And that's the thing. It's what they knew. Usually it's, they say better the devil you know than the one you don't. Well, they chose to not stick with the devil they knew, as it were. Doesn't that say something?
They exorcised the demon.
Yeah,
So, and if he had been hanging around 70, because that first fall off Mason and Warren Sharp numbers was like 15 to 70. And if you'd hang around, 73 and then he's 80,
that's
he
fine.
completely fell off. Completely fell off. That's a different story.
I mean, you can find highlights. I mean, everyone's got high points, everyone's got clips, but then you take the broader sample size, and he isn't the same player as he was in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
And you go back to the Tim Patrick, Devon Vele conversation. Hey, it hurt emotionally to cut Tim Patrick, yes. But by the time you got to November, Devon Vele was doing some Tim Patrick-like things in terms of production. The question now becomes, can Vele build on that in 2025?
Mm-hmm.
But you have to turn the pages to find out. There's a risk to that, because there's you go to the baseball saying about prospects being suspects, right? So you do have some risk to that, not knowing. But do you trust your coaches? Do you trust your personnel staff in choosing these players to bring in? Do you trust the players that you selected, that you brought in? At some point, you have to do that as well. If you're trying to build this culture, you talk about all of these cultural things. If you're trying to build this, at some point, you have to, by and large, trust that and be patient with it. Be patient with developing as much as you can. Now, there does come a point where the patience runs out. Tight end, for example.
Yes.
They gave Greg Dulcich 2 camps, right? 2 camps with Sean Payton, 3 camps overall, and then that's it.
That was enough.
Move on down the road.
Yep.
We're not there yet with Troy Franklin, for example. We're not at that point. We haven't reached the fork in the road. Greg Dulcich got to the fork in the road point, and he dropped.
Hurt him.
Yeah, he dropped a couple of passes early in the season. That was year 3. If he had that kind of start in 2023, he might have got another shot. He has it in 2024 at the fork in the road moment. Then that's it. And then he's inactive, and then he's cut. So the dynamic always changes from year to year, moment to moment. The scale, it's a sliding scale, right?
And they always are watching, Mace. So if we move on from Cooper Kupp, and let's turn the page there.
Yeah.
Who else should the Broncos target in free agency?
Well, it's interesting. Let's start with the Chargers here, the co-tenants of the Rams at SoFi Stadium. Probably overall the best running back still left on the market here. That's J.K. Dobbins. Pretty productive. Why, Cease, do you think the Rams chose to move on from him?
The Chargers?
Or the Chargers, I'm sorry. Chargers.
That's fine.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's a Los Angeles.
Rams, Chargers, whatever. It's been a long day.
Because you're going to be in for a large workload, and they're going to draft the back. Just because they have Najee Harris doesn't mean they couldn't jump you and jump up in the first round and get Omarion Hampton. That doesn't take you out of the conversation for Hampton at all whatsoever. Najee Harris is a multi-year 1,000-yard rusher, and that still doesn't change the draft plan for them. Doesn't change it for the Broncos, right? Evan Ingram doesn't change Colston Level at 20 necessarily. If it's BPA, it's BPA. So you move on, you go to someone that's going to handle a large workload. And with JK, you always wonder, are the injuries going to spring back up for him?
The Harbaugh connection is what brought him to LA in the first place. The John
brother
Harbaugh
to brother,
connection.
yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, and what you mentioned about the draft is another reason why I was a little bit surprised they didn't try to run it back with him a little bit. And investing, it's a 1-year deal for Najee Harris. So that actually tells me maybe the Chargers, that they don't go running back in round 1, that they go in another direction, that maybe they look to move up and take tight end in round 1, especially after striking out on Evan Ingram.
Yep.
Now, and maybe that's what Jim Harbaugh secretly wanted anyway, so he could get his guy Colston Loveland, his former Michigan guy.
Maybe. It's Harbaugh, man. It could be tricky that way.
He's a tricky, slippery character.
Yes, he is.
Harbaugh.
Watch that guy. It's in the eyes. You watch his eyes. But J.K. Dobbins seems like the chat room enjoys that conversation. And, again, in some form of a committee, there's going to be two backs. I don't want the waters muddied by a second back that's not really that much better than Jaleel. I want Jaleel to be a clear-cut third who doesn't really see the field unless it's certain situations. And honestly, one of those is red zone. He proved last year he's going to get to the pylon. He's going to outrun you to the pylon. So, there's certain situations where Jaleel can get on the field, but I want two backs where it's clear. This is A and this is B, or 1 and 1A, whatever you want to call it.
Actually, in the red zone, doesn't Blake Watson kind of fit in there as well, because he's able to kind of navigate that space as a pass catcher? That was kind of where he showed the most in that very brief moment we saw him against the Chargers, when he got the ball in space out in the right flank and he made a couple of people miss. Like, that's the moment where I thought, okay, let's see more of him. Like, that's if I can quibble with Sean Payton on the running back usage, like that was, I wanted to see more of Blake Watson in that game, more of that use, the way he had him in the red zone on that first series. That was a frustrating game. That was of course the game where he wrote "run the ball" on the play sheet.
Yes.
And
then got upset that the cameras saw it when it said "run the ball" in big letters, but
you can't get upset with that. The cameras are a reason why you're wealthy, because the cameras, the television networks, the contracts, the wide public interest in the sport. That's
right around the bottom of your visor. Run the ball. Okay, yeah, run the ball.
The cameras might have found that too. I don't know if there's a low angle camera, and the pylon camera looks out. It doesn't really look up. So he would have had to step out into the field of play for the pylon camera to capture it if it were on the underbill of his visor. Right. But that's an idea right there.
We got ideas on this show. Who else in free agency, Mace?
All right, you mentioned this because I tossed it out to you. Okay, who do you want to bring up? So next couple of guys are the guys that you suggested when we were having a conversation via text. Miles Sanders, Carolina let him go this week. Panthers brought him in from the Eagles a couple of years ago, and it's fair to say the last 2 years, Miles Sanders, a big disappointment for the Panthers.
Yes, 1,000%.
Went from a guy who was averaging 4.5, 5 yards a carry in Philadelphia to a sub 4 yards per carry player in Carolina. This past year, Panthers, a lot of things went wrong. One of the things that was right for the Panthers is they were in the top 10, number 10 to be exact, in the NFL in run block win rate. And yet Miles Sanders was there below 3 yards a carry, and he found himself on the lesser end of the running back rotation, with Chuba Hubbard getting most of the work. So the Panthers move on from him. Do you think with Miles Sanders, what happened the last couple of years was getting caught in the vortex of suck that exists there at the corner of Minton, Moorhead, and downtown Charlotte? Or do you think it's part of maybe just getting old and declining?
And a running back can fall off just like a wide receiver can. It might be that. I like his all-purpose skill set, and I would like his price because it's going to be like $2 million, 1 year, $2 million. But for me, Chuba Hubbard wasn't bothered by that. He wasn't bothered by their offensive line. He wasn't bothered by anything that they were doing in Carolina. Yet here we saw Miles Sanders having all those sorts of problems. So I like what Sanders can do all-purpose-wise, and I like that price. But yes, the skill set may be in decline, but you could sign him for $2 million and then he not even make the team.
This could be a very incentive-laden, team-friendly contract.
Sure.
And this is the type of thing you're looking at, whether it's Dobbins or Sanders. what you're trying to do here is pay a little bit of money to just put teams off the smell a little bit. And you're playing a game here. You're playing a game of having a lineup that teams around the league can look at and say, well, maybe they're not going to draft running back. Maybe they'll do something else, just enough to make them think that you may not do that. When you're getting into trade discussions, you got to be ready for somebody to call your bluff, basically. So if you have a Miles Sanders or a J.K. Dobbins, you can go into a conversation. Like, I mean, no offense to Audric Estime or Jaleel McLaughlin, but if the Broncos go into trade discussions, are there going to be teams that believe that they would start Estime or McLaughlin in week 1 rather than and not pick a running back early? Like all those teams, everyone will assume, oh, the Broncos are going to pick a running back. They'll assume that, right?
Don't we assume that at the coach's breakfast, Sean Payton, if they've fallen in love with Omarion Hampton, doesn't start talking about other backs? The way he talked about J.J. McCarthy, I'm not going to tell you, and then spilled the beans. It was J.J. McCarthy. He really impressed us. And then Minnesota's like, oh, crap.
So
Is Sean going to play the game?
So if he starts talking about Ashton Genty, you think he's all in on Omarion Hampton?
Maybe. Or maybe if they get a Miles Sanders, like, we're comfortable with Sanders as a starter.
Mhm.
Look at him. I mean, it could be something like that.
Yeah.
So watch what they say, but know that what they say is going to impact what they do or what they want to do. So I'm expecting a little Sean Payton, intrigue, some sort of spy game here.
Or know that what they say could be the old okey doke.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Pull
There's
you
a lot
in
of cloak and dagger here,
and then go in a different direction. That's the thing I think that you watch out for here, and that's okay.
What about the large contingent at Devin Neal's pro day? You know what I mean?
And watch, like we said yesterday, watch how they're spread on the 24th and the 26th of this month when you've got multiple guys doing their pro day workouts. Watch, because where you've got a bunch of them is where they may hang out that next day and do the extra day of work. It's obviously a little bit different with how you work a running back or a tight end compared to a quarterback, but the way they're prioritizing that, and frankly, the importance of getting this right at running back on the outcome of this season, it's going to be pretty profound. Like that's why I think you're going to see them very quietly get a lot of time in with Omarion Hampton, get a lot of time in with Ashton Genty, and maybe take that to Devin Neal, take that to a Caleb Johnson, perhaps. I mean, they went through all these running backs with the formal meetings at the combine, because in terms of what's going to be impactful in making a difference, in taking this team up from 10 wins to, they hope, 12 or 13, from trying to elevate it from the wild card to winning a division title, what's going to be the difference-making factor? It's going to be a running back. They've taken care of the other items on the checklist. Running back is the last item to handle. And the best way to do that was going to be in the draft. That's another thing. With all the only running back in this free agent group, Cease, who could have potentially had instant impact like that was Aaron Jones, and he didn't even hit the market. The Vikings locked him up before he got out to the open market. So no one was there who was going to be transformative in a way that the running backs in this draft class can be. Just like at quarterback, last year, no one was going to be transformative, as it turned out, like Bo Nix or one of those rookies was going to be. So it really feels interesting to look at this year, Cease, because there are a lot of parallels to last year. It's just we're talking about a different backfield position.
Mm-hmm. But we know what Sean Payton will do. Nate in the chat room says this. I just wouldn't want to play poker with Sean Payton. You know what I mean? Like, I bet he knows his hand, and I bet you don't.
I mean, maybe just the thing you assume is that he's lying.
But then is he actually telling you the truth? Because we've already assumed he could lie, and now it's really the truth, but we don't know, so we don't believe it. And then
you just sounded like the scene in Spaceballs when they're, go back to then. We passed then. When? Just now. We're at now. Go back to then. When? Now. I can't. Why? We missed it. Just now. When will then be now? Soon.
Rick Moranis, we love you so. We love you so.
Yes.
Yeah, we're table 9, baby. I saw that in our chat, our comments on YouTube. Like, you guys are like the freaks at table 9.
Well, what a kind thing to say.
Yeah, I saw your response too. Dover and I were laughing about it. Yeah, table 9, baby. Grab a chair.
Yeah.
Grab a chair. Speaking of now and soon, we're at the end of our window for our show today, Mace. So we'll punt on the rest of the guys that we could have suggested, because that might be something we do tomorrow's show.
But wait, there's more.
Oh, wow. That's a tease forward. On tomorrow's show, we'll tell you about a wide receiver who could be better than Cooper Kupp. Find out only on Orange and Blue today.
Come back.
Please. Was that too desperate?
Yes, that was.
It's whatever. All right, Mace. How do folks help us out on YouTube?
Like,
comment,
share,
subscribe,
hit that notification bell
so that you
never
miss vid. That's right. OBT is a BFD. He is Andrew Mason. Follow him on all the socials at Mace Denver. I'm at C Salami saying thanks. Stay tuned. Stay frosty.